Hi, my name is Kevin Wegner. This is my opportunity to respond to the Board of Education regarding a notice to remedy provided to me by my superintendent, basically stating that I have to recognize her role as the administrative leader through which all communication must pass. As this Board of Education may recall, when you appointed me your treasurer back in 2012, I told you I recognized the dual role of reporting to the superintendent as the assistant superintendent for business and chief school business official, and reporting to the Board of Education as the treasurer to the Board of Education, the position you appointed me to. I recognized that dual role, and I told you I was honored in the trust you placed in me because I knew I was going to be in a tough spot having a dual reporting responsibility. I also told you that I took the position very seriously. So how did we get here with regard to a notice to remedy? I'm going to talk about three issues that I raised with the Board of Education as their treasurer that were communicated to the superintendent but not acted on. And as your treasurer, I felt it necessary to share the information with you because it was of concern to me as someone who's trained in the area of finance and internal controls. You appointed me to do that job. I did it to the best of my ability, and I shared with you what I felt you had to know. So, like a lot of good stories, I'm going to start in the middle because the middle is kind of what caused me to go back to the beginning. So, back in January, I was presented an invoice from Herrick Consulting. 3 days at $3,500 a day, with travel expenses, a total of $11,732.46, paid out of a federal grant. No backup was provided to this invoice. I emailed our assistant superintendent for teaching and learning, said based upon the new guidance from OMB, the Office of Management and Budget, regarding federal awards and the requirement for us to shore up our internal controls, we needed to have some better backup as to what we were paying for. His response was, sure, I can do that. It's never been asked of me before. In the past, just putting Common Core was adequate. Are you accusing me of something? That was a red flag to me. I wasn't accusing him of anything. There was nothing accusatory in what I was asking him. I was trying to abide by the new guidance from OMB. As this board may recall, I have an employee that I adore who said something to me once that caused me to contact our auditors to investigate. She was concerned that she didn't get to pick who the sub was at the snack bar at the junior high. That's all cash that travels through there. The fact that she was concerned about that concerned me. Why would she be concerned that someone from the outside would be subbing at the snack bar where all the cash changes hands? As someone trained in finance and internal controls, that's a red flag. I investigated it. Fortunately, I didn't find any issues. But that's my job. This caused me to look back. What else have we paid to Herrick Consulting? One day at $2,500 a day back in July, $2,639.75 with expenses. One day with expenses, $2,590.65. One day, $3,500 at $3,500 a day, total $4,352.25. So our rate went up from $2,500 a day to $3,500 a day, 40% increase. No explanation. 2 more invoices shortly after that, 2 at $3,500, 2 at $3,500 a day. I wrote an email to the Assistant Superintendent for Teaching and Learning. Do we have a contract with Herrick? Why are we now paying $3,500 a day? His response, October 15th, 2014. We do not have a contract. We pay him that because his fee is actually $5,600 a day if we go through Leadership and Learning Center. It's pretty much the going rate for consultants. When I consult, I get $1,500 to $2,000 a day. So Greg, our Assistant Superintendent for Teaching and Learning, does some outside consulting work. He went on to say there isn't anyone who does what he does with behavior and academics for less than $5,000 a day. Is he that smart? Or are we that dumb? Is the question I have to ask. Think. I forwarded an email to the superintendent. Said this is getting out of hand. This guy just made $14,000 in 4 days. Her response was, oh my gosh, I never knew this. October 15, 2014. Some more Herrick consulting bills. This one's $30,057.33, 8 days. 3 days, $8,454.27. 1 day, $4,147.21. 2 days, $8,363.10. 2 days, $8,053.22. 1 day, $3,723.75. 2 days, $8,212.77. 2 days, $8,124.69. 2 days, $8,039.69. The total for 1.5 years, 31 days he was here. This school district paid Herrick Consulting $118,782.14. Again, is he that smart or are we that dumb? It's a question I have to ask. I questioned the judgment. I no longer felt comfortable approving these invoices. I brought them to the attention of the superintendent. During that conversation, the superintendent told me that when our assistant superintendent teaching and learning does consulting, he is associated in some way with an organization called First Educational Resources. I went on that website. On that website, first page, Tom Herrick from Herrick Consulting. Also on that website, this is an organization that hires consultants. It's a group of consultants that go out and do professional development for educators. Also on that website, they do about 11 events a year. I see 2 sponsored by Woodridge School District, internal universities at Woodridge School District, where we pay our teachers to attend these conferences held here in Woodridge. Again, I question the judgment, and now I question a potential conflict of interest. I raised those issues with the superintendent, and as you know, because there was no action taken, I raised them with you. In looking at the Assistant Superintendent for Teaching and Learning's website, I found a presentation that he did back on January 25th, 2016, in which he had these feedback flipper cards. Okay? The presentation was primarily about these feedback flipper cards. They're copyright by our assistant superintendent for teaching and learning. I don't know if we paid to send them to that conference or not, and I don't know if he was paid for doing it. I assume he was, but maybe not. But anyway, the feedback flipper cards were a major portion of that presentation. Shortly after viewing that, an invoice comes across my desk for 500 feedback flipper flashcards for a total of $1,080. Another red flag. I went back and looked the organization that produced those. Did we ever pay them before? Yes, we did. January 18th of 2016, right before his presentation. They arrived before his presentation. Obviously, this is a concern. If he's using these feedback flipper cards for his personal gain and we're paying for them, there's a question there that I have to ask. I've got to look into. You asked me to be the one responsible for the finances of this district. That's what I was trying to do. Brought it to the attention of the superintendent. Was told that these were ordered at the request of staff and they were all accounted for. I asked how they were accounted for. I still don't have an answer to that. I don't know how they were accounted for. But I was assured that they're all in district and being utilized. And finally, the last issue with regard to a prepayment for services. We don't prepay for services. It's one of our rules. It puts the district at risk. This board may recall, when we negotiated with the WEA, I asked that we alter the beginning date of our pay to teachers because we were starting to pay them before school started. It puts the district at risk if teachers don't come back. I'm trying to protect you. I'm trying to protect the district. I'm trying to protect the taxpayers. We were able to negotiate that into the contract. We don't make prepayments unless there's contracts in place. I was presented an invoice for the March bill listing from an organization called Mindful Practices. $14,000. Early childhood SEL curriculum and planning. No backup. I requested backup. I was provided backup that showed monthly observation, planning, and curriculum development days under the guidance of the Assistant Superintendent for Teaching and Learning. I went to the calendar of the Assistant Superintendent for Teaching and Learning and found that on occasion he had lunch with these people at Wildfire in Oakbrook. He was out sick one of the days that he listed as being a day that he was providing this guidance. Again, that raised the flag. I contacted the individual responsible for early childhood and asked, this is March 16, 2016, is there any new curriculum being developed for the early childhood program for next year? The response, nothing major. Portfolio requirements are being expanded and we will need to renew licenses for Teaching Strategies Gold. Again, concerning to me, I looked further. That's my job. I looked through emails between the Assistant Superintendent for Teaching and Learning and the organization Mindful Practices. On September 15th of 2015, from the Assistant Superintendent for Teaching and Learning to Mindful Practices, when can we talk and get things rolling for the year? The backup provided to me on the invoice already showed $1,750 worth of payment for services rendered. December 4th, 2015, in an email from the Assistant Superintendent for Teaching and Learning to Mindful Practices, I am anxious to touch base with you to see what we can still do this year. I must apologize for dropping the ball. The backup that was provided to me in justification of a $14,000 invoice already showed $7,000 worth of days where services were provided. Obviously, they were not. December 17, 2015, Assistant Superintendent for Teaching and Learning to Mindful Practices. We have great work ahead. I'm so excited about the possibilities of developing this together. The backup that was provided to me showed $8,750 of work already completed. February 1st, 2016, excited to dive in. $12,250 of the $14,000 was already in the backup as being rendered service. And then the favorite part of this, February 16th, 2016. From Mindful Practices to the Assistant Superintendent for Teaching and Learning. I have a question. Chicago Public Schools just laid off a bunch of folks from accounting, and so I heard checks might not make it out this month. They still owe us money from November. Do you mind if we invoice you sooner rather than later? That way I have a payroll cushion just in case. Woodridge School District 68 is not a bank for Chicago Public Schools. It's not the taxpayers of Woodridge who are responsible for the vendors of Chicago Public Schools. This is obviously a request for a prepayment of services that have not yet occurred. Unfortunately, I was directed to pay this invoice. So we paid $14,000. The shame of it is, I do think that they were going to develop curriculum for us for next year. But because we've already paid it, they'll probably invoice us again for it. So we'll pay for it twice because we're not following good financial internal controls that you hired me to carry out. When I brought these issues to your attention, rather than trusting the individual you appointed and trained to handle this for you, you ignored it. And you sicked an attorney on me and give me things like notice to remedies. The taxpayers of Woodridge deserve better than that. You're supposed to be watching out for them. I did my best.